America, land of the free? Not when 1 out of 100 Americans are currently incarcerated in either jail or prison, making America the country with the highest incarceration rates in the entire world. The U.S. has only 5% of the population, but holds 1/4 of the world's prisoners. Even more disturbing than the rates of the imprisoned is the privatization of the industry. The expanding prison industrial complex has a vested interest in keeping people locked up. Just like the security industry's growing lobbying efforts to implement harsher security legislation that would implement their products, there's a growing trend of private prisons. The prison industrial complex, which has grown 350% over the last 15 years, has been lobbying Congress hard to pass legislation that would imprison more people. Now, the private prison industry is by no means a new story, but the growing number of companies reporting record profits by means of locking people up is. Wells Fargo, you know, that bank that received a cool $37 million from the U.S. government taxpayer-funded bailouts, is also the main investor in 4 private prisons. That's right. The people that some say should be behind bars are the ones profiting off locking people up. Is this just an ironic twist, or is it good business practice? Earlier, I was joined by Russ Baker, founder and editor-in-chief of WhoWhatWhy.com, and author of the book Family of Secrets. I asked him what sets the U.S. apart from other nations and why are so many people behind bars in this country. Here's what he had to say.
Right, Abby. What we're doing is we're looking for new excuses to lock people up. That figure you cited, 1 out of 100, is quite alarming, but even more alarming is the figure of 6 million Americans who are under some form of supervision. They're either in prison or they're in the parole or probation system. That is a staggering figure. The correct term to use would be gulag. And what we're looking at is essentially the criminalization of extremely minor behavior, much of it victimless, coupled with severe and extremely harsh sentences, compounded by putting people who really are not dangerous into very dangerous facilities and turning them into hardened criminals.
Russ, could you talk a little bit about the lobbying you saw with the SB 1070 bill in Arizona and any other legislation that's really been pushed from the private prison industry?
Right. So this is a vicious circle. What we're seeing is as corporations pay less and less taxes, as the economy tanked as a result largely of corporate practices, and therefore there were fewer tax revenues, the states are increasingly strapped. And as they're strapped, they're looking to cut costs. And so along come these private prison companies saying, hey, we can do it cheaper than you can. And of course, the legislators just looking to show the voters that they were able to balance budgets, say, great. They turn to these companies. The companies then have an incentive. The only way they're going to make a profit is to basically do it as cheaply as possible. So they hire poorly qualified individuals. They have very, very bad conditions. There are a number of extremely interesting studies on this. So this already happens on its own, but then you've got the lobbying, and you've got this industry working hand in hand with an outfit you probably have reported on called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is a business lobbying group, and they not only lobby for business, but they also lobby on what appear to be social issues like that we need stronger laws, that we need a tougher criminal justice system. But in the end, it's all about business and it's all about profit for this fairly small circle of outfits. And
as we're talking about Arizona, you know, as these prisons are implemented in the states, they actually require to be filled with 90% occupancy. So that goes hand in hand with these lobbying efforts for more stringent legislation against immigration and drug offenses. Why isn't this a bigger issue, Russ? I mean, this seems like it's a big deal, you know, lobbying to imprison people in this country. Why isn't this seen on Capitol Hill, and why don't we really hear about this in the political dialogue?
This is part of a bigger problem in this country, and I would hold the media's feet to the fire on this, although it's not entirely the media's fault. We're just at a point in this country where people's attention spans are so short. There are fewer and fewer good media outlets out there, and they're looking for stuff where they can get a quick bite. What we're talking about here are complex, extremely important issues, but there is no shorthand to it. It takes a few minutes at least to discuss it. There are a lot of statistics statistics, and I think the tendency is to just avoid the conversation. If we in the media were to continue covering this as a kind of a beat, let's say the human rights beat, if we were to cover it regularly, I think the public would care about this, would wake up, and there would be a lot of pressure to take a hard look at the direction that this country is going in.
And Arizona just recently blocked a review of the cost and benefit analysis of their state prisons. Why do you think that is? It seems almost counterintuitive to block a review to see if these prisons are actually ensuring public safety and saving money.
Clearly, there's something wrong there. No government entity should ever reject an opportunity to evaluate what they are getting for their money or what the public is getting. So obviously this is something very, very suspicious. I'd like to see the explanations of why they don't want to know what is happening. But the reality is Arizona is leading this country in many ways in the race to the bottom on just so many different issues. And you know, we're seeing various states on our website, Who, What, Why. We just did one about an article about Tennessee, where they're making it easier and virtually encouraging teachers to question evolution and climate change. So this is part of this larger problem where these corporations, and not just corporations, but also extreme social forces in this country, are pushing for very, very low common denominator policies in particular states, and then through outfits like ALEC and their model legislation program, they spread it from one state to another. They've got the money to lobby, they've got the money for the ads, and they've got the upper hand right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually their explanation, well, I can imagine that it's because it actually shows that it doesn't ensure public safety. There's violent crimes that are way more apparent at these prisons, and the standards of living are way lower, and it actually doesn't save money. It's shown that they're actually more expensive and more costly to the taxpayers. So, you know, I would imagine that's why they're blocking the review. But Russ, just to wrap it up, do you see an inherent hypocrisy in the U.S. spreading democratic ideals and freedom abroad at the same time here at home we have the largest incarceration rates in the world?
Well, absolutely. And of course, this statistic where I think it's something like 1 out of 7 young African-American males are in jail, largely for personal use of marijuana, and some for selling it to customers who want it. I mean, these kinds of things across the board on one issue after another, they are fundamental human rights violations. The public in the United States, we are under extreme duress and pressure from a very small group of people who really just don't care about the kind of values on which this country was founded.
Exactly. And we see the federal trumping of state laws with the nonviolent drug offenders and the marijuana legislation just recently in Oakland, California. That was Russ Baker, founder and editor-in-chief of WhoWhatWhy.com and author of the book Family of Secrets.